So today I'm going to explain about what are the basic things you need to know to migrate a legacy code uh, which is written on old way of JavaScript, Ajax-based JavaScript coding. Um, so if your website is completely front end is completely written in a old-fashioned way, what are the basic things you need to know to migrate it to React? What are the basic concepts of React? How can we migrate a old styled web app to a React-based web applications? So those are the steps that we are going to see now. So today the topic of the to the topic is migration to React application, Re React based application. So to perform the steps, we are going to use a sample code, sample JavaScript, simple Ajax based JavaScript code as input, a simple HTML page which is built, and we will slowly move the entire code base. We will rewrite the entire code base um, which is which is React enabled. Okay, so for this we are going to use this particular sample example. So this is a simple web page which is a game, uh, I'll explain you the game actually. So here the game has two sections actually, the play section and the game config section. So the game config section will take few inputs via text boxes. Okay, so the text box we can actually decide the lower bound in one text box and upper bound in the other text box. So the number will be ranged between the lower bound and the upper bound. And we have a reset button on which actually resets the lower bound and upper bound based upon the input that we are giving. So in this case, our lower bound is 1 and upper bound is 10. So that's what you can actually see in the top. So uh, so guess the number between 1 to 10 is what you actually see. And we actually generate a random number in behind, and we need to actually guess that particular number. So to guess the number, you actually enter some random number between 1 to 10. So you are asked to enter the number from 1 to 10. Okay, so suppose I enter 3 here. So as soon as you enter 3, it will give you whether the your guess is correct or not. So as soon as you enter 3, it says that no, your guess is wrong. Your guess was 3, but the number that was randomly generated was a bit higher. So you have to go a little bit higher. Let's say like we'll go to 7. So it says that the number 7 is not correct and the number is little bit lower. That means the number is between 3 and 7. 3 and 7. Okay. So let's go and type 5. 5 also it says that it's bit little bit lower. So it is between 3 and 5. So that definitely it should be 4. Okay, so you found the answer. So this is a simple HTML page with Ajax JavaScript code in the behind. So I will just quickly show you the code for this HTML page that I have written. Um, okay, okay, I will open the code. Okay. Okay, so this is a simple HTML code which was written in using Ajax library. So Ajax jQuery libraries. So um, so here code-wise you can see that the code is like divided into HTML code, HTML part, and the script part. So this is the script part actually, right? So this is the script part, and this is the HTML part. So HTML part actually has two sections, which is the play section and the game config section. And the play section has two input, two main um, HTML elements, which is the input text box, and which is the second one is the button. So that's what you have seen here in the web in the page. So it has the input box and the make guest page, and the game config. That is the game config section, which basically has two text boxes, right? So those two text boxes you can actually see it here. So the button text boxes are like lower bound and upper bound. So these are the two text boxes that you can see, and button. So this is a button which is to reset the upper value and lower value. So you can actually reset it. Suppose lower bound you want to make it as 3 and upper bound you want to make it as 8. Then you click on reset. Then it will reset back to 3 and 8. Okay. So um, it is a simple HTML page which is not React enabled. Now we are going to see what are the steps involved to uh, to convert this particular simple application into a React based application. So for this purpose, we need to understand few concepts of React. So I will explain you in a separate video of different concepts of React application. For now, uh, I will just brief out what are the different different features of React that I am going to use for uh, for migrating our web application into React enabled. So we are going to use something called use state React hook. Okay. So we are going to use state React hook. So we have a lot of React hooks, out of which we are using one. Okay. So React has something come up with a new feature called React hooks, out of which there are like different kind of hooks. One of them is use state. Use state is there, use effect is another hook that we use, and use context. Use context is one hook. There are other many other hooks. Use params, use reducer, use callback, use layout effect. So I will explain you in detail all these hooks in later recordings. I'll in the later sessions I will explain you. Um, for now, we will focus on the practical implementation of what are the basic things that we do in order to migrate our web application into a React-based application. Okay, so that's for that we will be using a very famous tool called Code Sandbox. Okay, so Code Sandbox. So we log into a online editor. It's not only editor; it's like a full-fledged environment to build any kind of programming languages. React application is one of them. So we will actually create a code sandbox application. Uh, Code sandbox application. Let's go ahead create a code sandbox application. What kind of sandbox you are going to create? You are going to create a React based application, right? So click on this particular React. Okay. So as soon as you do, you will be provided with a basic framework of React based application. So here already a few of the fundamental things have already been created for you. App.js is the starting point, and index.js um, is having the code to actually render the app.js component. So here app.js is a functional component. We call this as functional component. Okay, just remember that. So we have in React we say that we say uh, something called function component. In this case, what we have seen is like app.js. So I will explain you what is it. So app.js is basically a functional component, and it has something called JSX written in it. So it is almost what if as you see, it looks almost similar like HTML, right? So React has a very fine-tuned way of actually enabling the user to write code as if he is writing a pure HTML code. So in this case, you are writing a simple HTML code, right? You are just writing HTML code, but actually it is not HTML code. It's basically a JSX, which creates a virtual DOM in React. Okay, so now we will see what are the different steps we need to do to convert our web application here, this web application, into a React-based application, which we are going to deploy in Code Sandbox. So you can see that Code Sandbox already has a demo here. In the right side, you can see whatever you have written here. It will be replicated here itself. You can see the output here itself. So I will say hello world, for example. So as soon as I say hello world, that's what you see here. Okay. So now let's change it. Let's remove this default H1, H2 that was given to us by the code sandbox, and rather we will actually write our own custom code, which which will be having the functionalities of this game. So we already have this code, right? So let's see what we can do with this code. Okay. So for now, we will focus on the HTML type. So as React has exactly the same way of writing the whatever JavaScript DOM that we are going to create via the HTML elements, right? So same JavaScript, same HTML styling can be applicable to React. So all we need to do is like copy the entire HTML code inside this. So done. So now we have copied the entire HTML code from our web page, which is there here. We just copied that to our React based application. That's what we have done, and our code is ready now here. So we have copied it, and we have that code working. But you see, so like this, we have two different sections, right? So why don't we modular it? Why don't we divide into two different parts? So for that, what we'll do is like we will not write the entire code in the functional component app. Rather, we will modularize it and create separate modules for each of them. So for that, what will we do is we'll create something like for play, we'll say play. We'll create a component called play. For game config, we'll create a component called game config. Okay. So let's see. So we will do something called um, function. So it's as simple as so let's name it as game config. Let's name it as name config. And React actually can take parameters in its function component also. We will look at it later. For now, we'll just have a default void parameters, no parameters at all. So we'll just create a game config, and we'll create another function for play. So function, we'll say function play. We are going to modularize our application. Okay, so function called play. So we are creating two functions now, and so two functions, and each function we'll just copy this particular play section, play configs part. This is the play config part, right? Uh, yeah. So this is the play config part. We'll just copy. We'll control X. We'll do control X, and we will copy this play part in the play section. So we have to write something like return and open bracket, close bracket, and return div. So that's what we are going to do, and we are going to use this play uh, component inside our app component. So it is as simple as opening it as a tag. Okay. So you opened it as a tag. Now you can see that in the right side we have this play section already again back. Okay, so now we have this play section. Similarly, we will remove this game config part. So this is the game config part. So we'll do control X. Now we don't have in the right side. You can see the right side we have only play section. now we'll copy this into the game config. So in return section like this, you just need to have a higher div element there, create a div element, okay, and paste it. And use the game config as a HTML tag here. So uh, you have modularized it. Okay. So your app actually essentially contains it actually has two children, uh, which are basically functional components. So play and game configs, right? So that are written just below, right? So you're just inheriting them. Okay, so now you have this UI ready. Is ready. So what are the different functionalities that you need to introduce, right? You have to on click on reset button function, make guest functions. So these functions are actually written in jQuery way. So this is what the function is written as, right? Right? So these are the functions written like this. So here you have to understand this code a bit. Um, so the lower bound is stored in lower variable, upper bound is stored in upper variable, right? And actually random number is getting generated, which is in number variable. And whenever you enter guess values, so it is entered in last guess variable, right? So this is what is the existing code is. But React, how it does it work is like we are going to use a React hook called useState for storing all these variable values. Okay, so let's go into one part. Let's go into the game config part, and uh, I will show you one example of a simple way of how to create a use state hook. Let's concentrate on lower. So for lower, to modify this lower variable as a use state hook, you need to follow a particular syntax. We have to use const type, and let's say lower is the state state name that you are going to use. Okay, and use lower is equal to use state. So use state will already automatically be included. Will already automatically be included in the import. So in the top you can see that it is automatically import. Code sandbox automatically infers it. Say it identifies that it is coming from React library. Okay, so the default value you can actually mention. Default value is supposed to be 1. We have seen that the lower bound has 1 as the default value and upper bound has 10 as the default value, right? So we have created a lower bound. Similarly, we will create upper bound also. So lower bound is done. Now upper bound, set upper bound. So now we have two hooks actually, right? So we already have two hooks, the upper bound and the lower bound, and we have to use this lower bound, upper bound values as values inside the input box. For the lower bound text box, we need to use we have to use this value, and for the upper bound, we have to use that value. For upper bound, we have to use the upper use state, upper value of the upper state variable. Okay, so now let's go to the so to do that, let's go to the text values here. So type is equal to text is there, right? So here you need to set the value. So value you can just set is at value, and the way you do is like value equal to the variable name, you have to put it is in curly braces. So in curly braces you just put it as lower. So now okay, so upper, right? So upper, we are modifying the upper, so you will put it as upper here. Okay, so same thing you can do it for lower also. Okay, so go to the input section of lower and just make value is equal to lower. So by doing this, you see in the right side, the lower point text box will be having the default value of lower value, which is 1, and the upper bound text box will be having the default value 10, right? So now how to actually if we change these values, how to actually store the new values? Suppose I change from 1 to I have to I change from 1 to 3, right? I should be able to do that, right? So to do that, we have to write on change event on each and every text box. Okay, so I will make on change event. On change event is there on text box. So on change event, I will write a handler for it. So I can just write a handler like this. Let me say let me say, let me give it a name handle lower change. So okay. So I'll give it the name handle lower change. So handle lower change is basically a function that I am going to call event handler on change event handler. I will call this particular function. So I have to write this handle change event, right? Okay. So let me start writing on handle change event. So handle lower change event will be inside itself. I can actually write a specific function. Okay, here I can just say so const handle lower change event equal to in React there is something called arrow functions. I am going to use arrow functions. So this is a practical demo of how we can actually use arrow function. Okay, I am creating arrow function and I will write all the functionalities which is essentially required to copy this value. What I will do is like whenever any change happens, whenever type new things here, I need to copy that into the lower value, right? And so for that I have to do like the value I will get it from event dot target target dot value. Sorry, event dot target dot value. So this I will get the value of the text that I have typed by this event dot target dot value. Okay. So this value event dot target dot value should be actually stored inside this lower value. So to store that value, we have to use this particular function that we have exposed, set lower. Set lower basically is a function to set the value of lower. Okay. So that is how the use state works. So I just call set lower of event dot target dot value. So this will actually change whenever you change values here. It will automatically make sure that the lower state changes. State variable named lower will change automatically. So like type 3. Now if you type 3, then the lower state variable will be containing the value 3. Okay. Similarly, now you can actually have handle upper value change. You can create a separate function. We can name it as handle upper change. Handle upper change, and in this case, we will modify. We will update upper. I updated upper, and you have to call this handle upper change in on change event here. Okay. So come here and say on change equal to handle upper change. Okay, so this way any changes that you make gets reflected there, right? Now what about the reset button? So reset button actually uh, um, we have to write reset button function, right? So so we have to write button on click event. So in button on click event, um, we will be having we'll create a separate function. Okay, so like we have created for upper bound and lower bound, we will create on click event here. On click event, let's say the function name, we will name it as reset. So we have to create a new function called reset. So let's change that. Let's create a new function here itself. Constant reset equal to uh, let's say that it doesn't contain any parameter, right? So we don't need any parameter for now. Or if needed, we'll add later. For now, we don't have any parameter. We just need to reset, right? So just we'll write a empty function now. So this event will be called when you click on the reset. Okay. So on reset, what is happening? What is happening when you actually reset? When you reset this lower value, upper value, based upon these two lower value, upper value, we have to perform some actions, right? So those actions are already there in our legacy code. So what is, we have to understand, in our legacy code we have a reset function which takes lower upper value, and it is actually calling another function called random int, and it is trying to manipulate. So let's see like what is random int doing. So this is a function for random int, right? So this is a function for random int. So let's copy this entire code of random int uh, so into our application. So random int code is there, so we have to convert into to React based random int function, right? So um, for that what will you do is like here we will create a rand int function similarly like const rand int. It is taking two parameters, right? So this is two parameters, and we'll use arrow function. So we'll use arrow function, and the inside logic we have to again revisit. Okay. I think this is good. This rand int function is good for now. We will keep it as it is. Okay. Now we have rand int function. We have to call this rand int function as in our previous code. We can see that reset function is actually calling rand int function, right? So we will do the same thing here. So go to the reset function. In the reset function, um, we should be able to call the randint function, and the randint function is actually set to a variable called number according to this code, right? Yeah, so number is set to the randint function. So here we will expose a new um, use state number. Okay, so we will say use state number, and set number is equal to use state. Let's say the default number will be 10 for now. Let's say we will give some default number, and this set number is used to change the state of the number, right? So I'll just call set number, and I will call this randint function. So I'll just call randint function, and uh, send parameters lower and upper. So this lower and upper here are being sent as parameters to the set number function. So set number function will, if you call set number function, the number will automatically get the randint value. Okay, so you are actually setting the number now. So after setting the number, you are ready. Uh, so basically, entire function is ready right now. Uh, so we have something called in React, we have something called use effect. Use effect actually, so like by default, when you actually load this particular page, right? When you load this by page, reset function is will be should be getting called, and initial values 1 and 10 should be initialized for lower and upper values. So which happens here in the bottom, right? In the bottom, you can see that a function reset is being called at the end after the entire DOM element loads. This particular function will be called reset will be called, which actually initialize all these variables, lower, upper, number, last case, and so on, right? So these values are getting initialized at the beginning. So for that purpose, in React, how we can actually do it, like by using a feature called use a hook called, it's basically hook called use effect. So we will just use that hook. So use effect. So we'll call use effect hook. So the use effect hook will be calling a arrow function. So this is called arrow function, and open and close. And here we'll just call the reset function. So I'm going to call the reset function. The reset function is here, it's right, which actually calls the rand int and sets the number variable. So we want to call it only once the page loads. So for that purpose, to call the function only once, we have uh, we have something called, okay, so we have something called empty, sending parameters empty way, like this. So if you call with the empty array, if you send empty array to the use effect, then this use effect hook will be called rendered only once. That means reset function will be called only once when the page loads. So that's what we exactly want. So we have actually converted our function here, which uh, which is here like this function call that happens at the end. So same thing can be done by using use effect. So in use effect, we will do the same functionality, which will be rendered only once at the end after the mount happens. Okay. So this is what the reset function is being called. So let's see what else we have to do. Okay. Now once we set this 1 and 10, we need to actually uh, le- we need to actually display few more things like guess the number between 3 and 5, last guess. So these are the text that we need to display in the play part, right? So let's go and focus on the play part here. So here game function component is basic functionalities of game form config is done. Now we'll go to and focus on the play part. Okay. Now here in the play part, what are the main things that we need to focus on is to uh, display few texts, right? So let's display things. So prompt is actually used to display the uh, ask the user to guess the number. So this is what they are prompting for, right? So just let's copy this particular thing here, and we will actually directly ag- um, try to display it like this. So there is something called template literals. I'm going to use template literals here. So template literals can be written like this. Okay. So I'm using a literals because this values three, whatever I have copied, 3 and 8 is not a constant. So it will change, right? So it will change. So those changes, the changed values, the variable values can be actually mentioned dynamically using template literals. So here I will say template literals. I want to do it. Suppose I want to use a variable called lower for displaying the value of the lower value, and I will use a variable called upper. So upper like this for the upper value. Okay, so I have to initialize the lower and upper value, right? Because I'm using it. So I have to use upper value and lower. I have to initialize these two values, right? So so I will send this lower and upper value from outside. So I can actually send them as props, right? So I will just send them as props. So one of the prop required is lower, and the one is upper. Okay. So this function actually takes parameters, and in React we call it as props. So I'm going to send two values, lower and upper, as props to it, and probably some random number uh, which is generated by the game config also I want to send. So I will also send a number. So these three values for now I am going to send from outside. So outside, what I means like I will actually send it from the game config. From the game config, here I am actually initializing lower, upper, and number, right? So these values I should be able to send them, right? So I should be able to send them. So I will actually do it later. For now, I expect that somehow play is going to get these values, lower, upper, and number, and I'm going to display them. Okay. Um, Okay, so you can see that the guess the number is between undefined and undefined. Okay, so what next? So let's focus on this undefined and undefined. So lower is not initialized because it is not being called. So play is not being called, right? So play should actually be play should also get these lower upper number values, right? It should actually get them, right? So for that purpose, what I will do is like in the definition of the play where I'm calling this, here I'm calling the play function component, child component, right? So here it is expecting these values, lower equal to something, upper equal to something, and lower is equal to something, upper is equal to something, and number equal to something. So this is what it is expecting, and I will send those values, right? So let's say like in the parent component, I will actually introduce another use state constant. So this is basically this config values. I'm going to send it to the config values, I'm going to send it to the play function component. So I will introduce a new config. Okay. So I'll say that you remember the syntax of use state, and I will send all these values, right? So use state, I will send them as a JSON value. So for now, defaultly, I'll send lower as 1 and upper as 10, and random number which I generate, I will say I will default it to 1 for now. Okay. So I'm going to send these three values. Okay. I'm going to create a use state here, and so I have a config value. I have config attribute. So config dot lower, I'll get the lower value. So lower value should be like config dot lower. Okay. And similarly, config dot upper will contain the config dot upper, and similarly number config dot number. Okay. Now you can see that the code is working fine now. There is no exception. So I'm sending the property values lower, upper, and number to the play from the config use state. So the set config will be called. Set config is a function. Whenever you call the set function, the config will be automatically be changed. So you have the set config function is there, right? I will send this config function. I'll set this set config. I'll call this function set config function as a prop value in game config. So in game config, I can actually introduce uh, a a a prop called on reset. I will actually prop can be a function also on prop on reset, and we'll call the set config function here. Okay, so on reset should be actually called from within the game config file. That's what I have mentioned. I said the game config knows something called on reset, right? So I will go to game config back here, and I will actually call the on reset function. So where shall I call the on reset function? I said on reset function should be called on whenever you click on this reset button, right? So on reset function, I will just call the property dot on reset here in on reset function. So here, as soon as I set the number, I can just say props dot. So let's say like I have props value here. So any number I can just introduce props variable here, and I will actually call the props here now. Okay, props dot on reset. Sorry, on reset, right? Yeah, I'm calling the props dot on reset here. So on reset, I'm going to call. Uh, I'm going to set the variables lower, upper, and so on, right? So I'll set those all values. So basically it is a JSON variable, and I am going to set lower here. Lower to this use state value. This use state is also name is also lower, right? So I will set lower to the lower, and yeah, upper key to upper, and number, right? These three things I'm going to call. Okay. So for now, I'm sending only upper, lower, and number. These three things I'm going to call on reset event. On reset is nothing but a delegate called set function, right? Both are same. So when if you call on reset, internally it actually calls set function, set config. And if you when you call set config, the config values changes. Config values will be the lower, upper, and number. So this value gets changed automatically. So this basically is a JSON object, right? So it's basically a JSON object, and this JSON object is the initial value. Later, you state later when you actually call on reset set config, this value will be replaced with this new value. What are you going to send from here? So lower upper number, this new JSON object will be called and it will be reset. And this value will be reflected in this config variable, which will be sent as parameter as prop, which will be sent as prop to the play function. In the play function, we are using config dot lower, config dot upper, right? So so that is being called. So internally in the play also the values will automatically change, and it will be reflected here in the UI also. In the UI, you can see that in the play section we already have uh, in the play section we already have a prompt which takes the value lower and upper value. So let's see that if it works. So if you say 3, yeah, so we need to do something else actually. Actually, we have to call the reset function, right? We are just sending the props values, but we are not calling. So we need to click on the reset button. Yeah. So because we have actually we have to we are actually calling the on change config values, right? Config values on reset function. If you see in the game config, on reset button click, we are calling the props dot on reset. So whatever changes you click on 4, if you click on 4 and click reset, then that is getting reflected in 4 on click of the reset. Now it is working. And I change it 15, reset, 15 is getting replaced. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we are able to successfully send the values of lower bound upper bound to the play component, file component. Okay, so this is the way, these are the simple steps that we need to follow to convert a legacy based web application which is written in Ajax-based jQuery library to a React-enabled applications. Okay. Now, now you know, right? These are the steps. What are the steps? What are the exact? What are the other? What are the other functions which are missing? We'll just complete it as a part of this course. So we are actually displaying last guess, and we have to write a function to click of on the main uh, button called make guess, right? So these functions also we will actually complete now. Okay. So here, let's go to the play section now. Here, now we have to write a function for make guess, right? So on click on make guess, what should happen? Okay. So Uh, let's do that. So for that, we need to write a function. And before that, what are we missing is like we are missing the different values that needs to be displayed. In the last case, what are we going to display? We have to write that, right? So we can write that like this. We can write the whatever we want. We can actually write it here. So probably like we have to create a variable called last guess. Last guess. We'll create a use state. Suppose, for example, we can just create a use state, and we'll just display the string last guess. And we have introduced a new variable called last guess, right? This last guess should be there now. So last guess, we will just introduce a use state. Okay. So where will we introduce the last guess use state? Let's use a use state. Um, let's use a constant. Okay. Let's create a use state constant. Let's say constant last guess set last guess. This use state we are going to use equal to same thing, same use state. Let's actually put a default value also for it. So what default value we will put, we have nothing to at the initial state, right? So we'll put it none. We'll just put it none. So last guess. So this is the use state that we are going to use. And similarly, like this is last guess status. Status will use a variable called status. Okay, so we'll create a new const use state hook again. uh, Use state hook, the name is status, right? Status, we'll use the same status, we'll use the same status, and status will be having none, it will have nothing, no status actually. Initially, we'll not use any status. Then what is missing? Last guess status is done. Uh, Now the user will make a guess. On click, he'll type his own guess, right? He will guess 4 or 5 numbers. So that we need to store. So we'll create a new hook, use state hook to to store the current guess. So current guess, we'll write guess, set guess. Okay, so this is the function that we are going to use it. Okay, so we are going to use guess. What is the initial value you want to use for the guess? For now, nothing. Let's keep it like this only. Okay, and this guess variable, we will actually use it. Um, we have to use it in the label, right? Label for guess, guess. So where shall we use the guess, right? So here we'll create in the input value, we will say that value, right? Yeah. So button. Yeah. So you have here in input, on input, any input changes, right? Similarly, in the previous, in the config also, like for input changes, we need to handle a change event, on change event, right? So let's do that. Let's change on change, create on change event, and let's say we are creating a function called handle guess, handle handle guess change. So I'm creating a new function called handle guess change. So I have to create that function now. So let's say handle guess change is a function, and so what this function will actually do is just create. It will take the value of the guess value. Handle guess change event on event, right? It takes the event as a parameter, event as parameter, and arrow function. And this is syntax actually. So you have event, and this event similarly like event dot target dot value, right? Target dot value, you will get the actual guess value, and this value you have to change, you have to put it in guess. So to put it in guess, you call the set guess value, right? Set guess, you just call the set guess value here. All right, so now you have handle guess change. What else is missing? Handle guess change on change event, you called this one. And button, let's see what is missing here. So on change, okay, the syntax error is on change equal to this one, right? So now on change event handling is done, right? Um, so whenever any change, whenever you type anything like 345, it will actually get stored in the variable called guess. It will be stored in variable called guess. And what happens when you click on the make guess, you have to write a separate function. Okay. So for that, you actually write a separate function. Constant make guess equal to some, for now, empty parameter. I'll just send empty parameter and empty parameter, and I'll leave it as it is. Now on click on this make guess, what are the functions I need to write? So in the legacy code, we have guess function, which is something like this, right? So we will use the same thing. So we'll just copy this thing like this. Okay, or yeah, so let me copy this. Okay, so make guess, on click on make guess, I will do the same thing like this. Okay, and and I also have to set the last guess also. Last guess I am going to change. So last guess, to change it, I have to call this function set last guess. So I will just call set last guess with the latest value, current guess, right? So current guess I'm going to handle that. Okay, so this status is equal to nope is the old, is the not the React way. In the React way, what I have to do is like I have to call this particular function set status. Okay, so instead of doing this, I'll just call set status, set status, set status, and this particular value. Okay. Similarly, set status with this value, and similarly set status. So I have already explained how what is this purpose, right? So the set status will actually set the variable status. When you, if you want to set the variable status, you cannot do it directly, but rather than you have to call this function set status. Okay, so this will actually set the variable of value of the variable set status. Okay, then so we have implemented make guess, we have implemented guess input change. What else is missing? Last guess. Yeah, last guess, make guess, everything is done. So yeah, so everything is almost done. We are ready with our demo. So reset, if you say, so we have a working application of React, right? When click on this reset, click on 3, automatically 3 gets uh, reflected. And whenever you do a particular guess and click on make guess, so we have to make some changes like whenever you click on make guess, it should actually take this variable 4, and we should be able to display saying that last guess was 4, right? So last guess variable, this last guess variable should be set to the guess value. That's what we are doing. uh, yeah, that's what we are doing. Okay, so last guess, everything is done, and we have to just display that, right? Yep, so let's do this like this. Let's do reset, and let's call like this. Okay. So only thing we are missing is like we should be able to display the last guess value in this variable called none, which is default to none. Instead of none, we should be able to show the last guess value. So this particular variable last div value, which is taking last guess as input, should be reflecting fine, right? Mm, yeah, and we should be able to display that, right? So something small is missing actually. So am I calling make guess? Yeah. So here on click event I have missed that, right? So on click on make guess I should be able to call. I should be able to call the function that I have written. So on click event should actually call my function which I have written, which is make guess. I have written a function called make guess, right? So I am calling this make guess function. So this is the function. So on calling of this function, I'll save it. And on call of this function, okay, so it's working, right? So on call of this function, I am successfully able to change the values. Okay, so this ends our demo. So this is a demo of simple steps that we need to follow to convert our legacy based web application written on uh, Ajax, jQuery Ajax, uh, to React React enabled web page. Okay, so this is our React enabled web page, which I have dynamically created right now in Code Sandbox. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you very much.